Every time you remind me, you're right. Take away my pride, to burn it to the ground, so we can start again. My crimes are left it to remind, to burn it to the ground, so we can start again.
Alright guys, normally I would let the intro play out, you know that, but today I think it calls for a bit of a different occasion. The Eagles roster has been cut from 90 all the way down to 53. Thank you to everyone for tuning in. I know this is becoming somewhat of a regular occurrence now, these live streams. So it's a Saturday night. You could be out partying and having lots of alcohol, but instead you're like me and you care a little bit more about the Eagles, and that is what really, really matters here. So thank you so much for tuning in. We've got every position lined up with funky transitions. We're going to go through who's made the cut, who hasn't made the cut. I think there's a couple of holes on this team, a couple of positions I don't really personally agree with. And of course, along the way, we'll be taking your takes, looking at that live chat and getting you guys as fired up as we possibly can. So there's no better place to start here, I think, than the quarterback. And I guess there's nothing really too outstanding to say about this. We knew what the situation was going in, that the team had to keep Nate Sudfeld around in order to IR stash him. And if the thing is that they go to do that, that means that Clayton Thornton's probably going to come back on the practice squad, but they can't get him on there without Sudfeld being IR'd, and there's no way he's being exposed to waivers. So Josh McCown is your current QB2, Nate Sudfeld is QB3, and I think that's probably best for his development. If we're talking long term here, we understand what Nate Sudfeld has got up his sleeve. I think we got a nice grading scale this year, not only against Cody Kessler, but then also against a veteran in Josh McCown, someone who has 16 years worth of experience in this league. So from my understanding, I think the team probably felt like they need more experience yet from Sudfeld, that while he's great in preseason, they haven't yet seen him on an NFL field. So I don't know, I think I understand the moves here. There's again nothing too outstanding. The only really thing to, I guess, bear in mind is that Cody Kessler's been waived in. That's probably the best for everyone involved. But if at any point, guys, you've got takes or want to come back to a certain position, let me know. I'm essentially just going to steamroll through these. We've got cards with funky flashing lights for all of them. Then from there, we can go back and have a much more in-depth discussion. So we move on to running back, and I think this was where we immediately started having some controversial chatter. The 4 running backs who made the roster, I don't think were ever in doubt. The real question was going to be, would there be an extra 5th running back? And today we got our answer, and it's unfortunately no. So Jordan Howard and Miles Sanders will be your first 2. Darren Sproles and Corey Clement sit on the back end of the depth chart. The immediate thing that stands out here is that Wendell Smallwood is gone. Now that for me is both, I don't ever want to applaud a guy losing his job. I think that's very unfair. But in terms of his fit with this team, the fact that he's been given chance after chance, he just hasn't really given anything over the last couple of years. He's been given opportunity after silver platter with no competition around, hasn't been able to assert himself as a dominant RB1, and there is a chance he makes it back on the practice squad. I highly doubt it. I think he's going to end up somewhere else, so he's probably going to get poached somewhere like maybe New York or Houston, somewhere in a little bit of need for that position. You know, the urgency that the Texans are now playing with this. So to me, that wouldn't surprise me at all. The one guy I was rooting for, of course, was Boston Scott, who had great kick return potential, returned some kicks for the Eagles last year, looked like a baby Darren Sproles, and the only reason he didn't was because the real Darren Sproles came back. He's built in the exact same vein, runs the same way, but just couldn't really come out and get that all together. So that sucks. That was the one move I was a little bit disappointed in, but we kind of knew he wasn't going to make the team. It was always wishful thinking, you know. It's sort of like you hope you get a free dessert, but you know you're not really going to get one no matter how many jokes you make with the waiter. It's always just a Brucey bonus. And then Donnell Pumphrey, he's also off the roster. That was a move I think everyone saw coming a mile away. It was too little too late for me with Donnell Pumphrey. I think that he finally started to show some progress in preseason, but that was just not happening. It wasn't enough. There was way too much going on in the background. I remember that first preseason with the Eagles, and he just looked like an absolute ragdoll. I always use that analogy, but he was being thrown around left, right and centre. And he's had stints since then. He's been on the team and off the team, and I think the one thing we've got to bear in mind now with this position in particular is you look at Pumphrey and you look at Smallwood. they haven't hit well on running backs, and they'll be very much hoping so that Miles Sanders can change that. This late draft running back mentality hasn't worked, and maybe that's why they felt the need to press on and take Miles Sanders with that 53rd pick. But at the end of the day, Pumphrey did kick on a little bit towards the end of preseason. If you compare him side by side with Boston Scott, I think Pumphrey ran 11 carries, Scott ran 10, and there was a 3-yard differential between the two. So at the end of the day, they may catch on somewhere else, but as of right now, they're not on a team. Again, practice squads will be formed overnight. And then you've got a guy like Josh Adams, who, led the team in rushing last year, but did have a somewhat limited ceiling. And that, at the end of the day, I would have thought he would have been a perfect backup behind Jordan Howard. But given that Corey Clements seemed to return to health quite rapidly, he got a little bit of action in 11-on-11s during training camp, and all of a sudden looked absolutely fine and was away to the races. So that sort of solidified his spot on the roster there. We now move on to offensive line, and this is another position that is going to cause some controversy. The big name that stands out here, there's two. One being Nate Herbig, an undrafted free agent that has fought to make his way onto this team, had a great preseason, and the minute he was taking reps over Stefan Wisniewski, I feel like the veteran's fate was sealed. So we're going to get into that a little bit later. It all ties together with those two, and the third cog in this triangle is Matt Pryor, a guy that unfortunately suffered massively this preseason. And you'll notice a trend here that the Eagles, I think, are very much tied to their drafted players. They don't like letting them go. They don't like being in situations where those players are going to be cut too soon, like a Tease Tabor or someone like that that's just been there for 2 years and is already out of the fray in Detroit. So with someone like Matt Pryor, where he was taken in the 5th round anyway, he is a developmental prospect. You're assuming you're going to have that learning curve, and it was just a discipline issue. I think he's got the intangibles there, so another year on the scout team certainly won't hurt him. But obviously he's been pushed up to that final 53. They value that versatility. The one name to really miss out here, and again, I'm not going to be that guy that is like, yeah, guys off the roster, because at the end of the day, someone's just lost their job, and I'm never going to root for that sort of thing. But since the start of the offseason, I think I've been one of the very few people, if not the only one, saying that I don't think Stefan Wisniewski is going to make this roster. And unfortunately, that has turned out to be the case. He's been beaten out by Nate Herbig. We've seen Keegan Render take snaps over him. We've seen him move to center and start soaring balls all over the place, like high, low. There was never really any accuracy there. And now there was a brief rumour. It was never really verified by anyone. I reached out to a source. He literally just didn't even respond, which was brilliant. So that tells me there was no validity to it. But the Eagles were apparently looking to shop Stefan Wisniewski, and I don't think there was a market there because everyone kind of assumed he was going to be cut anyway. So there's 10 linemen on the team. Wisniewski, who was a starter in Super Bowl 52, has slowly but surely slid down that depth chart, taken bumps and bruises along the way, and is now out of favour with the team. And he should catch on somewhere else. He's played with the Jags and the Raiders before. He's played at centre and guard before. He's got the veteran stuff there. I just don't think that he's going to be, taking regular season snaps, barring an injury somewhere. Also missing out, no real shocks here. Riley Mayfield, Anthony Fabiano, Ciro Opeta, 3 guys who are long shots to make the roster, and Keegan Render, who I thought potentially had a slight in route to maybe leapfrog Stefan Wisniewski as a backup centre. And that's the other thing. The Eagles don't have a backup centre still behind Jason Kelce. Now, the one player to look at would be someone like Nate Herbig, but he's more of that swing guard, versatile sort of player. In fact, him, Big V, arguably Sayamalo and Pryor are all becoming these cross-trained linemen, so perhaps the Eagles feel they can get away with taking one lesser in order to accompany that as well. So let's see what you guys are looking at the chat here. Obviously there's a lot of excitement about TJ Edwards. We'll get to that a bit later, but the one thing I want to really focus on is the quality on that offensive line. Jason Peters, Lane Johnson, I mean, we already know the starting 5. But then behind those guys, Andre Dillard, Big V has had an outstanding preseason. Let's please not forget that for one moment. And then you've got Jordan Mailata, who does end up on the final 53 after a topsy-turvy preseason. It wasn't, I don't think anything that was mind-blowing like we've seen in years past. Certainly last year when he was, I think it was the initial shock factor. Once that's worn off and now we see him as an NFL offensive lineman, we're a lot more cynical and critical of his skill set because it's suddenly not this wild dream that he's able to do these things as just a raw athlete alone. So that's all I would call that learning curve. But Pryor, for me, I've said since day, is probably one of the most valuable assets on the depth chart of that line. It's not that he's going to come in and start right away, but he's someone that played every single spot along that TCU line. He had chemistry with Big V, and the fact that Vaitai is now moving to guard, it just opens up a little bit of versatility for guys like Herbig, like Pryor. If you just think beyond Andre Dillard, okay, if you're looking at the sheer bottom of that depth chart outside of the top 5, Big V's a 5th round pick, Matt Pryor's in the same sort of region, Jordan Mailata was a 7th round pick, and Nate Herbig was undrafted. That is tremendous development for the Philadelphia Eagles, for Jeff Stoutland, for Doug Peterson, for all of the assistant coaches. That is tremendous coaching, and they're going to take a lot of solace from that. It's absolutely brilliant. Guys, if you are new to this channel as well, you enjoy this sort of content, there will be pretty much a clone of this video, but in a bit more of a streamlined focus. Obviously, not everyone has an hour on a Saturday night, so I'll be streaming this down with some more calculated points. That will be uploaded tomorrow, and obviously tomorrow's Sunday, which means we've got This Week in Philadelphia Sports dropping as well. So if you enjoy this sort of content and you're not yet subscribed, it would mean the absolute world to me if you could hit that big red button. We're now going to move on to our 4th position, and this is one for me where there is a bit of a surprise, and it wasn't the surprise I was hoping for, and I think this has to be addressed very, very quickly through the waiver wire. The team have 2 tight ends on the roster. Now, albeit there are 2, I would call them all-pro potential tight ends. We already know Zach Ertz has got that far in his career, and Dallas Goedert is almost certainly bound to. But given this team's tendencies to want to run 13 personnel, to value those tight ends, those inline blockers, the fact they've only got 2 on this roster is scary. Even if you take away 13 personnel and you're just looking at this from a sheer talent perspective, there's no one there. If Dallas Goedert goes down, someone that has already missed preseason because he took a knock in preseason week 1, that's something we have to bear in mind here, that there is no one else behind him now. So there is a chance that Will Tye, I'm assuming, is going to catch on elsewhere. He's a veteran that can be brought back later on. Alex Ellis and Joshua Perkins both waived. They could hit the practice squad, but in that same breath, they could also catch on elsewhere. And that is also something that people have to be aware of, because we don't know what's going to happen with these players. There's a strong chance that someone like the New York Jets, who are familiar with Josh Perkins, obviously thanks to the appearance of Joe Douglas as general manager, are able to then look at this and say, hey, do you know what? We're going to take these guys out of here and just poach them and put them on the Jets practice squad, because they want to build a roster that they're familiar with as well. So I really wouldn't be too stunned to see something like that occur. But it's interesting. I mean, there are going to be plenty of other things on, I guess, face value as well. You're going to see tight ends from across the league also cut. So I really wouldn't be too surprised to see some surprise name, maybe a player that the Eagles were high on in the draft process that fell undrafted, slipped through the cracks and is now waived. Anything like that we could still see moving into next year. But a great point there by Citros, who says that Will Tye essentially, it was Blues Dude that says Will Tye has no guaranteed money, or has guaranteed money, so we'll be back. Yeah, same sort of thing with Orlando Scandrick, and we'll get to that a little bit later too. This isn't how the final roster looks. There could be a lot of ifs, buts and maybes between now and week 1, but we'll get to those in due course. Another position I know is going to cause a lot of discussions. I can't wait to see how this one goes down. Who's in at wide receiver? We've got Alshon Jeffrey, Deshaun Jackson, Nelson Aguilar, JJ Arcega-Whiteside. We knew those 4 were going to be in the chat. So in the team, I was looking at the chat, you can see it, multitasking's gone well at 11 PM in England. The one guy I don't think anyone kind of assumed would be Matt Collins, and there was a 50-50 split. There were people that wanted Hollins because he does the floss and he was great as a rookie, and then there are those who are more conservative, who understand that that phantom injury in 2018 was bizarre, and the fact that 2019 rolls around and someone like Greg Ward Jr. comes out of the gate, storms into preseason, picks up 87 receiving yards and does what Matt Collins can't. He goes in and makes an impact. He hauls in a touchdown grab. He goes up and shows his catch radius. And on the same routes, you're not seeing deep routes here by these wide receivers in preseason. I'm sure if Thomas is in the chat, one of our writers, he's going to attest to that, as will Brian Cameron. But given the sample size and the vanilla offense that we saw, I think both Greg Ward and Greg Ward and Mark and Michelle did more than Matt Collins. So with that in mind, I go back to what I said earlier about running backs and what I said about offensive linemen with Matt Pryor, and that the Eagles don't want to give up on their draft investments too easily. We've seen it with Pumphrey, we've seen it before. And just to Brandon Moore's comment, this isn't Matt Collins hate. This is from me building a roster outwards and seeing what I see. Matt Collins has value on special teams. I would say that Markin Michel brought more value in terms of an actual WR5 offensively as someone that can get open after the catch and make plays in open space. What's keeping Hollins around is the fact he was a 4-year captain at UNC on special teams, the fact that he has proven himself as a speedy deep threat who averaged over 17 yards per reception at UNC, and as someone that more prolifically, I think, is a big-bodied wide receiver, someone that is fitting this bill. You look at J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, you even look at Dallas Goedert, Alshon Jeffrey, there is now a trend here that the Eagles want to get bigger, they want to dominate down inside the opposing 20, so I hope that's enough statistical nonsense to back up my point there, Brandon. This is no hate on Mac Hollins, just from what I saw, I would have much rather seen a little bit more optionality out of that wide receiver position. It also does raise a couple of points as well, in that they're both going to catch on elsewhere. I think Markin Michel, much like Alex Singleton, should have a career out in Canada. He's someone that shone during his time there. He should still absolutely be able to go back there and make an impact. Ward Jr., you've just got to feel for him at this point. You really do. He's come back 3 seasons to try and make this team after transitioning to wide receiver. He then goes out to the AAF, balls out again, comes back to the Eagles, and he's just short. He's literally a breath short every single time. And Rayton, don't get me wrong, I completely agree. I think special teams, he does have value. I've said that all along. I put an article out recently stating special teams value, going into tackles and snap counts and stuff over at my website, phillysportsnetwork.com. So believe me, I get the value as to why Hollins is here. I would have just personally looked at the fact that, can you have value when get on the field? You know, you can't make the club in the tub at the end of the day, and that's something that we need to keep in mind, is that if this injury that played him not just through last season, it's not like he was here all through OTAs, all through training camp, he missed most of it. And if I'm Greg Ward or Markin Michel or even Carlton Agudosi, I'm a bit pissed off, because I've given it all. I've been sweating out, I've been taking those hits, making those plays, while Hollins has been working away to the sideline, comes back, does nothing of real relevance during preseason, and somehow beats me to a roster spot. So from that point, if from those guys' angle, I'm annoyed. From the Eagles' perspective, like I said, their special teams unit has taken a massive, massive knock this year. So again, I can understand it. And on another quick note, there's something that's just come out via Ian Rappaport, that the Chiefs, Eagles, Chargers and Patriots are the team with the strongest early interest on LeSean McCoy. I don't want to get too much into the LeSean McCoy debate, because I don't think it's one worth having, but there is naturally a vested interest from the Philadelphia Eagles and the Kansas City Chiefs, both of whom have members from the coaching staff who have worked very closely with LeSean McCoy. Interested to see in the chat though, let's just go back to running backs for just a second. It's crazy, we've got over 160 of you watching, so guys, if you're in this chat and you're not talking, join the discussion. Let's talk LeSean McCoy then for a second. If we're looking at this running back picture, who are you dropping out to bring in LeSean McCoy here? If you're carrying a 5th running back, who's basically going to be a B-Tech Miles Sanders at this point, and it's a very bad English analogy, a budget Miles Sanders at this point. He's over 30, I think he averaged 3.2 yards per carry last year, he's kind of over the hill, he's lost out, Devin Singletary beat him out during training camp and made a very impressive account of himself during the preseason. Is there room for LeSean McCoy on this roster, or is this just a case of bringing the band back together? What is this sort of thing? Now, let's just have a look and see what you guys are saying on this, because from a fan perspective and seeing that, there is a natural love for LeSean McCoy. Everyone loves him and what he did for this franchise during his time here. But is it always good to go back to someone this late on in their career? And what value will it bring the Eagles? I mean, all it's going to do really, I think, is take the weight off of Miles Sanders. It potentially is going to hamper Corey Clement's snap count and roster opportunity. So that's something worth bearing in mind. But I don't know, I feel, obviously from a sentimental standpoint and a storyline standpoint, it would be brilliant to bring LeSean McCoy back. But if it comes down to it, and you keep a 5th running back, and then at the same time you're going to let someone else go, like a Boston Scott, someone, even Josh Adams, who would have probably brought a bit more reliability to the roster, I can understand it. So I wouldn't say that I'm in on LeSean McCoy. I wouldn't be massively against it, but at the same time, I think this team have made way too many moves out of sentiment and almost like longing to bring that band back together that was broken up before. So I don't know, we'll see. But as of right now, this is the way the running back picture looks, and I'm not too sold on the idea of LeSean McCoy. So let's just see what you guys are saying about LeSean McCoy. Let's get into the chat and bring up some of your comments. Now we've got to the end of offense, let's bring LJ in his Charlton Athletic shirt back to the fray. So let's have a discussion, guys, before we go defensively here. Kenzo Rome, no shady, love him, but he'll take away reps from Miles and Corey. Bingo, I totally agree with that. Thomas Ringard, our newest writer at phillysportsnetwork.com, says, Corey Clement doesn't give me anything LeSean McCoy doesn't. If Clement's here for only a year, that being said, Clement's young, still has 2 years. Yeah, that's the thing. And if you're going to bring in LeSean McCoy, it is going to naturally hamper Miles Sanders, who is your 53rd overall draft selection, someone who, of course, was drafted with the same very pick that once brought in LeSean McCoy. So I'm just intrigued because, I mean, you've, I guess, got to look at it from both standpoints. If there is a sentimental value to bring LeSean McCoy back and get him a ring, but is it not? Well, I would say at this point, if you're going to choose between LeSean McCoy and a third tight end where you have no depth behind the starters, don't bother. Just go and get yourself the tight end. Jamesy Hardiman is said it takes too many rare snaps from Miles. I think that's generally the consensus that we're seeing here. True prodigy, if Macklin comes out of retirement to play for the Eagles, I'm done. Let's get Brent Selleck as well. Let's just get the whole band back together. Drop Darren. Okay, yeah, what about that? What if we take LeSean McCoy in this theoretical instance where the Eagles sign him as a free agent and then drop out Darren Sproles? Would that be... I don't know. I'm always a bit skeptical with this sort of thing. But would that make it a bit more appealing to those who are a bit more against it? I don't know. Interesting stuff. Brian says, doesn't fit the culture the Eagles have built. Oh, let's not get any hot takes of stuff in here. If we can bring down Sproles back, then why not bring McCoy? I think the thing is that he counted a lot against the cap during his last contract at Buffalo. That's something a lot of people aren't taking into account, so we have to be very wary of the fact he may want a little bit of a payday. Now, the Eagles could afford to give it to him, but if they're not going to pay Malcolm Jenkins, I would be a little bit concerned about that. So that's something to, again, just be wary of as these talks progress. So let's head over to defense then. Let's talk defensive tackle. Little bit of a shock here as well. You keep 4 defensive tackles on the roster: Cox, Jackson, Jernigan, and Hassan Ridgeway, who was of course obtained with a 7th round selection trade during the heart of the NFL draft. Who's out? Trayvon Hester, the guy that has been blocking field goals for fun, that has been a special teams ace, that if you go back and look at some of his defensive snaps on the coach's film, he brings a bit of burst to him. He's got a really nice explosive first step, and he's now gone. So that is a big shock to me. I was very, not disgruntled, but a little bit appeased to see Trayvon Hester out of the picture. I think a lot of people are in that same boat. It came as a bit of a surprise, especially, again, I made the point last night for those who are here for 2 nights in a row, that essentially the Eagles in 2017 had Bo Allen and Destiny Vio, and both of them combined for over 60% of defensive snaps. And in 2018, they didn't get that. The Eagles lost that depth, and as a result, Fletcher Cox had to play like 88% of snaps. He's now dealing with an injury where he's just started doing sprints and we're a week away from week 1. If one of those defensive tackles goes down, we don't know what the recovery process is like for Timmy Jernigan. Malik Jackson has been quiet in camp, and Hassan Ridgeway's had a quiet preseason. So I would have absolutely rolled with a 5th defensive tackle. That was on every 53-man prediction that I submitted and put out there. I don't know about you guys. Harley Gage says should have kept 5. Joseph Schuster, very happy that Jordan Mailata is out here. True Prodigy says, I really thought Hester would have made it, especially with... Yeah, I think that's been the general consensus here. They could pick Hester up off the waiver wire, but he has to go through the waiver wire. And I think after having such a big preseason and a big training camp and a big 2018 where he flashed a lot, I can't see him getting out past a team like the New York Jets, where Joe Douglas is going to have his eye on him as someone that is now very familiar. So he could get claimed. That's a player that, again, you want to be keeping your eye on. So D. Davis, nice to see you in the chat, my man. Guys, if you're watching this and you're not in the live stream, make your voices heard. Let's just get these hot takes. Let's get all your opinions out there in this, I guess, a very unique reaction to the roster breakdown. So Brian Cameron again says, don't forget Graham's versatility. That's a good point. And I think, I guess, in that same breath, in a way, that Malik Jackson can play the 3-tech and the 5-tech as well, so that's worth bearing in mind. Obviously the Eagles do like running a lot of NASCAR packages, which is going to benefit them a lot, and while we're talking NASCAR, I'm not going to cut to anything about NASCAR, but we are going to go to defensive end. And this, I didn't say it comes as a surprise. The big thing here is we've actually got a positive to talk about, which is Deshaun Hall has made the final 53. The guy had an outstanding preseason. I don't think there's any other way to put it. He was an absolute behemoth from start to finish. Had no real reason to doubt that. And in my opinion, I think he's taken the defensive end 4 role away from Josh Sweat, who, I'm not sure about Thomas here. Thomas is our resident sort of film guru. He plays the sport, has played for the Danish national football team. Like for me, I've seen more out of Deshaun Hall. The contextualizing I think aspect here to bear in mind is that Hall got most of his production against the 3rd and 4th string guys. We saw Josh Sweat go up against 1st team and 2nd team right tackles. That is something you have to bear in mind. However, it's safe to say for me that Deshaun Hall, DE4, it just makes sense. Sweat and Miller have been beefed down that depth chart a little tiny bit. So I don't know, I'm in two minds about it. It's not the end of the world, but it is certainly something worth monitoring throughout that 2019 season of can someone like Josh Sweat jump up again. Most of his production as a rookie came against the New Orleans Saints. I think like 48 of his snaps came against the New Orleans Saints. Not a lot at all. Sharif Miller to me still looked one-dimensional in preseason. He hasn't gone out of his way and added a counter move or a spin move or a rip move. It's bull rush or bust for Sharif Miller the same way it was in Penn State, and I think he is going to be a DE5 or DE6 on this roster. Whereas if you take a look at someone like Deshaun Hall, a former 3rd round pick who has gone out and just obliterated with a chip on his shoulder everyone in his path, that to me speaks volumes. The two guys not to make the roster were Kasim Edebali and Eli Harold, and now we get to linebacker, and there is bound to be an eruption of both, I guess, elation and heartbreak all in the same chat. So I expect the chat to go crazy the second this hits the screen, because on one side of it, you've got TJ Edwards making the final roster. On the other side of it, Alex Singleton doesn't, and that is it's horrible. And for Howie Roseman to come out after this decision and say he was torn between the two for so long, it speaks volumes. It really, really does speak volumes. But TJ Edwards on this final roster, that's amazing. That's huge for his own sort of benefit in his career. And I know Thomas has been a huge supporter of him for quite some time now. But TJ Edwards really settled into this team, I think, as time went on. Preseason games 1, he was a little bit quiet. The 2nd, he had a bit more comfort. And game 3 and 4 was just pure confidence. The thing that, so me and Thomas ourselves have been going back and forth, as has Brian, as has Chris and Eric, who are all I assume in this chat, except for Eric, who's on holiday, so we can let him off for tonight. But I think that there's two different windows of looking at it, okay? You've got TJ Edwards, who is probably going to come in and give you some more defensive upside. He's 3 years younger than Singleton. He's a little bit more established in his actual defensive play, and just brings you a lot more developmental talent. On the other side of it, you've got Alex Singleton, who flashed way more on special teams, was making special teams tackles every single week, and is a little bit more effective, in my opinion, in man coverage situations and as an off-the-ball linebacker because of his experience in Canada. And at that position on the roster, when you're looking at a 4th or 5th linebacker, I feel like that's what you're looking for out of guys. You're looking for someone to come in and give you that special teams injection. So I don't know. I feel that Edwards is definitely better in pass protection. Edwards gives you in zone coverage a little bit more reliability, a better instinct for the ball. But if you're lined up man on man, I do feel that Alex Singleton would have provided just a bit more value on that front. That's just my personal take on it. Again, it's not gospel for sure. It is entirely subjective. But TJ Edwards, we've all got to be happy for him. We have to be happy for TJ Edwards, who's gone out of his way, balled out, had a fantastic end to the preseason, and now joins LJ4. Camu Grugier-Hill may be waived after week 1, so do not be surprised to see someone like Hayes Pollard pulled back into the team. I missed out Zach Brown. Okay, so Zach Brown is on the team. I made a mistake there. Zach Brown's on the team. There's one other, I think Kevin Wilkins got waived as well. I missed out. And so Zach Brown's on the team. You've got to understand that I had to make these cards within a 1.5 hour radius from the time it was all announced. So I promise you Zach Brown is on the team. But yeah, I think moving forward, Camu Grugier-Hill may get placed on IR. That's something to keep an eye on. But Singleton himself has got offers on the table. I know for a fact there is interest from Calgary. They want him back. They were taken back with open arms from what I've been told. And obviously, like for those of you who followed my coverage for a while, both here and at phillysportsnetwork.com, I'm a big fan of the CFL, and it's a lot more accessible to get to learn the game from coaches and scouts and players and that sort of thing. So I know from doing a little bit of work away from here that the CFL is begging for Singleton back. Like 2017 defensive MVP, the guy set records in both years he was in the league, 27 special teams tackles. Calgary's defense, having just changed defensive coordinator, the linebackers coach has moved up. They lost their two biggest playmakers last year. They would welcome Singleton back with open arms just in time for a push for the Grey Cup. So don't get me wrong, the Stampeders are all over him at the minute, so he can sit back. He's in a very unique position where he can sit back. The problem he's got now is, do I go, right, I'm one injury away from making an NFL roster and sticking on the Philadelphia Eagles, which is the ultimate dream, or I can go out, refine my craft again, go out in Canada, dominate again, and have some fun with it, and actually come back a more flourished player. But then that's taking more time off your body clock, your body's taking more hits, you start to wear down. So, I don't know, it's a tricky spot to be in. Outside of that, there's no real shockers here, other than the fact I left Zach Brown off this mix. So, sorry about that one. We now go into cornerback, and this is something I think we have to take a little bit of care to as well, because Orlando Scandrick was cut. As a veteran, he can be brought back by week 2. So after week 2, Scandrick can be brought back to this team. That's huge for him. That's probably going to come in a coinciding move with putting on IR Cravon LeBlanc. So LeBlanc's likely going to hit injured reserve. Scandrick will come back as that nickel corner. And the rest I can't really see making this roster. Jalen Mills went to the PUP list. Ronald Darby, Rasul Douglas, Sidney Jones, Avonte Maddox all make that final roster. The one problem I think we've got now, guys, is we don't know when or how this depth chart is going to figure out. You assume it's going to be that Ronald Darby's your cornerback 1. I would say it's going to be Sidney Jones, CB2, and Maddox in the slot. And once again, poor old Rasul Douglas is left out in the cold. So if I'm Rasul Douglas, I'm not too happy. But, a lot can change. So overall, I think it's a very solid position. The Eagles have got a lot of young talent stashed away at that position. Hawkins didn't really do anything for me. McKinnon didn't do anything for me. Ajeen Harris really played a nice game in Game 4. But other than that, it wasn't really enough to say, hey, that's going to get you a spot on this roster. So maybe a couple of those guys come back onto the practice squad. But outside of that, nothing really outstanding at the moment. And now we go on to the safety position. And this has caused a lot of discussion. And guys, if you were in the live stream last night, if you were in it for week 4, we've had 3 live streams in 3 days. What has been my one take for the last 3 days? The one surprise player that makes this roster that no one else has had on their final 53. I've looked up, the bigger blogs and the bigger outlets. There's been one other person who's had him on there, and that's Mike K. I love Mike and his work at NJ.com. Outside of that, I've been pounding the table for this guy, Rudy Ford, out of Arizona. So the guy comes into this team very late. The Eagles had a lot of safety movement around this team. Jason Thompson came in, but in the same time, that same week span, Trey Sullivan and DeAndre Hall both got cut. Both of those guys combined for over 30, I think it was 60% of special team snaps last year. 13 tackles of the team's 82 last year came from Trey Sullivan and DeAndre Hall. The second they got waived and they bring in Rudy Ford, a veteran who has had 422 career special team snaps for me, that screamed he was their replacement. They lost Blake Countess to injury, someone that led the Rams in special teams tackles in back-to-back seasons. They needed someone with special teams prowess, and I think they got that in Rudy Ford. That's exactly why he's on this team, and maybe that's why we lost a defensive tackle in Trayvon Hester. Maybe that's why we lost a tight end in Josh Perkins. That's why I'm seeing him here. So for me, this safety group is very, very strong. Malcolm Jenkins, Rodney McLeod, Sendejo, podcast listeners get a shout, Jonathan Cyprian, and Rudy Ford. Now, the problem that we've got moving forward, obviously, is the Eagles didn't address that third safety spot in the draft. There is no young talent there. Jenkins hasn't had a pay rise. Rodney McLeod has had a reworked deal. Sendejo and Cyprian are 1-year deals. There is a state of transition at safety right now. We could see a couple of shocks after this season, maybe even a late trade. I don't want to go too much on that, but it's certainly viable. But outside of that, yeah, that's a strong safety group. I like it. And Rudy Ford makes the bottom of this roster. That's made my day. I think that's the 2 bold takes I've had that I've been pounding the table for have been that Wisniewski won't make it and Rudy Ford will. So to see them both, it's a nice, for someone a million miles away and get slandered for sticking to soccer, I think I've done you guys pretty good here. So I've sorted you out. But let's go back to the home screen. Let's have a little chat about the Philadelphia Eagles. And I need to have a drink. No alcohol tonight. We're on a matching Coca-Cola because Charlton won. And yeah, let's just hear what you guys are thinking about this 53-man roster, the guys who've missed out, the guys who've made it. Let's have a look and see. There's a lot of controversy still about LeSean McCoy. I'm intrigued to see what Ford is capable of. I think they believed enough to keep him over someone. Yeah, and bearing in mind, Trey Sullivan's been with this team for 3 years. DeAndre Hall would have been his 2nd year. So it's not like that Rudy Ford has been brought in and they've cut 2 bums. They like what they've seen in Trey Sullivan and DeAndre Hall. So they're 2 guys I think would have had a home on special teams, absolutely. And they're still trying to find that role from Chris Maragos that's left behind. So it's intriguing to say the least. I'm glad that me and Kiri are sharing Coca-Colas. Let's scroll up and see what else you guys are saying in the chat. Hope Michelle goes to the practice squad. That was from a Pharaoh Hope. Takeem Hilton, who's not given us Jadeveon Clowney trade rumours today, says Rudy Ford might get waived when Jalen Mills come back off the PUP, not Nate Jerry. That's a shout. I can kind of see it happening. I don't think Jalen Mills comes back to this team at all, if I'm honest. I really, really don't, because I don't see where he's going to fit in. If we just go back to this cornerback position one more time, then just for, because I've gone to the effort of making these animations for you, let's just see where he's going to fit in here. Jalen Mills comes back off PUP. He's not CB1. He's definitely not CB2 now that Sidney Jones is in his place. It's like, that's a second round pick. And if we're going on for this ideology that the Eagles are protecting their investments with players like Matt Pryor still around, with the running backs taking forever to get off the roster, when you look across the board, like, they protect their investments. Like, Matt Pryor still on the roster, So with that in mind, Mills was a 7th round pick. He's in his contract year. They're not really tied to him in any way. I think he doesn't come back, because who's he going to take snaps from? Realistically, unless you're going to put him in a red... Everyone says, oh, well, Jalen Mills is a red zone specialist, and that's fine. But I think he's a red zone specialist because he's kind of poor anywhere where he has to defend an area of land. It's like if you stick him up to a brick wall and he physically can't be beaten and he can jump in the air, yeah, I think anyone would be fine in that sort of situation, So, to me, like, if Jalen Mills comes back at the expense of a Rasul Douglas, I'd be fuming. If he comes back at the expense of Cravon LeBlanc, I'd also be fuming, because LeBlanc has shown way more to me in 6 months than Jalen Mills has in 3 years. So, it's tricky. I don't think he's going to come back. There's no room for him unless it's as a depth corner, where I don't think he'd be happy. The only way I can see it working is if he wants to sign a short or a cheap contract extension that's going to undercut the rest of the market for next year, knowing there is a strong cornerback class coming out. There's a couple really nice corners coming out, one out of FSU, one out of Florida, that I've been keeping my eye on over the last weekend or so. And I genuinely think that if Mills can beat them to it and say, hey, do you know what? I'll stick around. I can see I'm not going to be your starter here. Let me be a CB4. Let me be a CB5, for heaven's sake, just anything. And he signs a 3-year deal worth $7 million. Something cheap and cheerful, nothing too extravagant, right? Then the Eagles will keep him around, and he can back up Rasul Douglas or Sidney Jones or Avonte Maddox, then that would be fine. But outside of that, really? I can't see him forcing his way back onto this roster. The Eagles are trying to figure out a way to keep him, but I can't work it out in my head. I know Jim Schwartz is besotted with him, and linebacker Nate Jerry as well, but it's just not something I can genuinely foresee in terms of coming back onto this roster. But again, guys, give me your hot takes. I want to talk this out with you and just see. We got about 23 minutes. I wanted to do this for about an hour. And again, if you've got to go, don't panic. There'll be a proper condensed video where I'm not saying and guys every 2 seconds. So you can get all of the big stats and all that stuff. That'll be in tomorrow's video, along with This Week in Philadelphia Sports, which is by far my favourite thing to do on this channel, which is sitting down, making light of the headlines, having a laugh, getting sarcastic and having some fun, and just a nice way to end the week, although I have got to move it to Saturday because Eagles play next Sunday, don't they? So that's going to be a thing. There's still a lot of talk about LeSean McCoy. Over 200 of you are watching this. That is insane. You guys are literally on another level with these live streams. So, like I said, this channel is very much yours. It's something where I want to give you guys what you want. So if you like live streams and you kind of chew them up and eat them, I'm going to churn out more for you. It's that simple. So if you enjoy this sort of thing, just be vocal about it and you will get as much as you can possibly digest. True Prodigy says, we gave Mills his chance, it's time to move on. Too much amazing CB talent. I would agree with that as well. Kiri says, not sweet on Jerry right now, but I would love to be proven wrong. Yeah, I think the one defense, I've still not had a drink. Hang on, give me like a solid 7 seconds here. Can you tell I was that kid at school that did all the presentations? Like, I did all the talking and none of the work because vocal cords. Yeah, I think with Nate Jerry, the thing to bear in mind is that he has bulked up. So if we go back to this linebacker chart, just to get a visual representation, the fact is you're going to have Nigel Bad on one side. Nate Jerry is now going to, with Zach Brown. I forget Zach Brown is on this roster, so please don't freak out. Brown is there. I'm going to have to like pencil him in or something. Can I just add text? Give me a second. Wait there. Watch this. Right? You think ESPN's great, right? Look at this. Oh, no, that's gone a bit big, isn't it? Can I move that? There we go. I fixed it. Absolutely fixed it. So, now if we take a look at this linebacker depth chart, right? Zach Brown's going to be a middle linebacker, as is, I think, Nate Jerry. Nate Jerry's going to be a middle guy now. If you partner up, you've got Brad on outside, Camu's an outside guy, Fort's an outside guy. Jerry's put on 30 pounds in 2 years. He's bulked up another 15 in 2019. That transition from what was a very light and nimble safety down to an outside linebacker, then inside to a middle linebacker, is tough. So I would say let's just kind of just relax him a little bit. I know he hasn't been the most productive. I think there's been it doesn't go with the transition. I've got to move it around manually, haven't I? Should we try that for the next one when it spins back around? We're just going to see how this works now. But genuinely, yeah, I feel like we can give him a little bit of a chance. See how he performs at middle linebacker. Maybe he doesn't have the mustard to, there you go, see, look at that, to play the Mike linebacker, or maybe not. Who knows? But as of right now, I think the thing we've got to bear in mind, giving him that slack, that he has essentially moved 3 positions, gone from a safety to an outside linebacker to a Mike linebacker. So I don't know, we'll see what happens, but as of right now, Camu's going to get IR stashed more than likely, and that's going to leave Bradham. Zach Brown, he's going to move up to there in my very animated rankings, and then behind it's going to probably be LJ Fort on the other side in those base packages, and then we're going to see potentially a little bit more of TJ Edwards on the outside as well. So, back to where I don't have to keep adding in text because I've forgotten players. Let's just get you guys some opinions as well. Let's bring back Shady. See, this is the thing. I mean, I'm in the same boat with you here, Pressure, that maybe it's like a soccer thing because player careers are short-lived, but I don't like this whole sentimental longing after players that left your team 10 years ago thing. And in the 5 years that I've done this now, so I know this channel's only been up for 2, but anyone that is familiar with phillysportsnetwork.com or has ever read an article on phillysportsnetwork.com, you'll know that for 5 years, all I've really reported on in the off-season is LeSean McCoy trade rumours, Deshaun Jackson trade rumours, Deshaun Jackson wants to be an Eagle, LeSean McCoy wants to be an Eagle, D'Amico Ryans wants to be... Do you know what I mean? And it's just the same thing. Like, at some point, we've just got to appreciate that it's not that life anymore. Like, they've moved on. They've invested a second-round pick in Miles Sanders, and I just can't get my head around it. So, if he brings value, fine. But at the minute you're taking then a 5th running back, you've deprived someone who would have been much cheaper in Wendell Smallwood, and I really don't want to compare LeSean McCoy to Wendell Smallwood. I really, really don't. But if you go back and look at 2018 just from a pure stat perspective, I'm pretty sure Smallwood had a larger yards per carry. And you've got a more electric, LeSean McCoy with the least possible wear on his tyre in Miles Sanders because he was stuck behind Saquon Barkley for a year. The last thing you want to do is bring in, Miles Sanders has just got out of the shadow of Saquon Barkley. He gets to the NFL and you're going to put LeSean McCoy back in front of him. Like, come on, it's not worth it to me. But that's where I stand on this whole thing. Let's see what else you guys are saying in the chat. We've got around 15 minutes left to go. Tom Kerry's not happy about Matt Pryor. I don't know. Right, okay. Also, while we're talking about LJs here, LJ Smith might want to be an Eagle, but there is only one LJ that comes out of your mouth right now, people. All right? I'm joking. That sounds really vain. It's not at all. But I'm honoured to share the LJ nickname with LJ Smith, even though I don't really do nicknames. But yeah, as for Matt Pryor, I feel that he's a project guy, and if they're going to keep Jordan Mailata around, they at least owe it to keep that 5th round pick around. As Pryor, as I said, he started at every spot along TCU's offensive line during his time there. Every single spot. So tackle, guard, centre guard, tackle, play, all of them. That's invaluable if they can get that to translate to the NFL level. He's like a big dancing bear. He's got such a mammoth frame. He can move so quickly. The problem is, as we've seen, it's mental. It's discipline. It's the penalties. It's not so much pass protection. It's not so much run blocking or athletically. It's the fact that it's just the mental side of it. At least from what I'm not saying he's this clean, pristine pass blocker, but there's certainly a lot less to worry about than there are with other people. Lone Revolver 1 says, I'm sad about Mark and Michelle. Hopefully he makes a practice squad. I am sad as well. I wouldn't be worried too much. I think the thing we've got to concern ourselves with there is that he probably might go back to the CFL or even be picked up by the Patriots where he can join his brother or be picked up by the Jets or someone like that. There are a lot of people out there that genuinely would want to see Michelle back. I'm one of them, but the truth is there are a lot of teams out there who want to see Michelle because he brings that yak ability. 6971 Roby, thank you for tuning in, said, Razul is a very good tackler and has interceptions when he plays. To me, I see in the media, I think he's made for safety. And that's a great observation. Now, I don't know how familiar you are with our channel, Roby, at all, but if you go to our videos and just search, I think there's actually a video called Ball Hawking Safety or something like that. It's a film breakdown of Razul Douglas, why he would fit at safety. So yeah, I don't know. I think to me that ship has sailed. If they would have moved him to safety, they would have tried it by now. Same with, I think everyone's, Avonte Maddox. We thought that was going to happen this year. Even the Eagles safety coach Tim Hawke said that he wanted to see, Avonte Maddox at safety. It didn't happen. Your boy Blake Cashman raising eyebrows said, dude, Blake Cashman is a stud. Like, I'm telling you, that guy's going to have one hell of a rookie season. He's like Darius Leonard, but on a budget. Like, I love him. So let's go back to corners then when we're talking this, and we're talking Razul Douglas. So where's he going to fit in? Obviously, we've got Sidney Jones to worry about. I think there is a bit of a concern here with Sidney Jones over, is he now CB2 or CB3? Where do you put Maddox? Like, which one is going to be your starting outside corner? Is it going to be Jones, who's a little bit smaller, a little bit stouter, and has been more of an internal corner? Recently, he got thrust into like week 17 against the Cowboys in 2017. Kind of held his own, but it was on the outside, and then was a nickel for a bit. He's played a little bit sort of everywhere, whereas Avonte Maddox has been assertively played. He got lobbed at safety and killed it. He played outside and killed it. I think Maddox is a natural brawn and bred nickel corner. He's got the size. I think he's like 5'10" off the top of my head. Dominated there at Pitt. He's been excellent there with the Eagles. That's why I'd stick at nickel. I think Sidney Jones has to go outside. If you're going to spend a second round pick on a cornerback and you're still afraid to put him on an island, it's not a good investment. And I think Sidney Jones, this has to be a make or break year for him now. He's had his rookie year taken away from him. We all knew that. We accepted that as part of the deal. He comes back in year 2. And, again, that little week 17 flurry was cool. But injuries come again. And he had the first few weeks of 2018, he was excellent. Like, I think the game against the Bucks, the game against the Colts, brilliant. There was that one play against the Colts where I believe it was Quentin Nelson he took down. Like, he genuinely went out on a block, took down an offensive lineman, and then got to the ball. Absolute baller. He's had a great training camp. He's been quiet in preseason. He hasn't really been exposed that much. But if he doesn't get put outside, if he doesn't end up at CB2, I think it is a knock on him. Like, it is going to be. If you're going to take Avonte Maddox and put him at CB2, that's probably, for me, a much more of a sign of confidence in him and a lack of it severely in Sidney Jones. So we'll see. That's a tough picture to figure out. You can only get 3 of those guys on the field. Bearing in mind, Malcolm Jenkins often fills down as that box safety. So 3 of those guys on the field, 3 of them are on the bench. Obviously, I know Mills is on PEP anyway, and LeBlanc's going to be IR'd, so that will be replaced with Scandrick. But for the most part, that's a very, very tough picture to work through. But any other takes, guys, you've got, please be sure to let me know just in the comment section. We'll get as many read out as we possibly can. To Jones and Douglas on the inside. Yeah, that makes sense. Also, again, if you're new around here, if you've not hit subscribe yet, we are absolutely amazing. If you could, we've got 185 of you watching. That is incredible. We would love to grow this channel as big as we can. Have these streams kind of before games, after games, during games, when there aren't games, like for all different sorts of sports. So we're trying to build something special here, something different that brings you not only closer to the sport, but the people that cover it as well. And you've got that like kind of intimate relationship. So that's what we really want to try and build. And we would absolutely love you to be a part of that as well. So Deshaun Jackson embarrasses Douglas in practice. Yeah, but in that same note, Takeem, Deshaun Jackson's going to embarrass everyone in practice, like no matter who you go up against him. And again, I would point back to what we saw in 2017 when Alshon Jeffrey was ruining the life of a certain Patrick Robinson. And even from that, again, this is going way back to before the channel. So if you're familiar with my content from this sort of era, you're a real PSN like OG. But there was a time when he was being like obliterated. Patrick Robinson was outside CB2 being ruined. And I said I'd put a film room out on him. And I was like, his best season came with the Colts as a nickel cornerback. He's a nickel corner. Like, he needs to be shifted inside. And if that trade didn't happen for Ronald Darby, he would have been CB2. His career would have been ruined. I don't think the Eagles would have gone to the Super Bowl. I don't think Ronald Darby was as big an impact as Patrick Robinson, but there wouldn't have been a Patrick Robinson without a Ronald Darby, because the impact that Ronald Darby brought was an instant CB1, which then pushed Mills to CB2, which pushed Patrick Robinson inside, where he just so happened to enjoy both of his best seasons ever now. So one with the Eagles, one with the Colts. Didn't do too badly with the Saints last year either. So it just shows perspective is key. Douglas, for me, he's not a guy that's going to line in man coverage against the press. He's a zone corner. They didn't play a lot of man coverage at West Virginia. That was a massive concern coming out. But he's a ball-hawking safety. If you put him looking over the seams and the flats, and if you put him over in like a cover 3 sort of look where he's just taken over like that sky concept, what you then get is a player that is just comfortable in his zone, that can range down, that can break on routes. I don't believe it. I think he's more of a zonal cornerback. So let's just see. So what Patrick Robinson say the championship game? Yeah, 100%. Codex123. I love the fact you've been doing this for so long. Thank you, man. I do as well. I've somehow pushed. I remember when I first started this and I was 19. And I thought the abuse I get now is pretty bad for being British and having a voice like a child. Back then, it was unreal. So somehow I pushed through that 5 years. I've got a lot of respect from you guys. There are some people that still hate me and will still go out of their way to make comments and stuff. But that's cool. That's each their own. But I love the fact that I'm able to win over that respect and go, all right, you know what? Let's roll with it. And that's amazing to me. So just thank you for giving me a chance more than anything. Theo used to torch Eagles corners in training camp. Good point. Let's have a look. I hope Suro Peta makes a practice squad. Yeah, okay, let's go back to the offensive line then, because Peta was another guy that I know a fair amount of you. Corey Allen, tell your barber to quit. I can't say that online, get demonetized on yet. Dude, I would. I thought that we were going to be best friends, me and my barber. And I went to London and I was like, listen, sort me out. I've got a big weekend away. I need to look the part. He was like, have you had a skin fade before? I said, no. This happened. Big mistake. But back onto the offensive line. To me, I still think this is the most perplexing position of the entire team. You look at, more specifically, Suro Peta, if he's going to make the practice squad, there's a lot of guard depth now. Like I said before, you've got Matt Pryor, who can play every spot along that line. Big V, who is now a borderline right tackle or a right guard. Nate Herbig was the big surprise there. I think if they were going to keep one of that bunch of Keegan Render, of Suro Peta, of Herbig, the fact that Herbig made it is incredible. Fair play to him. To make this depth chart on this offensive line, that's tough to do. We know how stacked this O-line is. Just look at that depth chart. You've got Andre Dillard, who's now the franchise left tackle. You've got Big V, who's probably going to be a week 1 starting guard until Brooks gets back, but then can be that swing tackle. You've got Mailata, who's a project tackle. You've got Pryor, who can play every spot, and Herbig clings on. That is huge for Nate Herbig. So Suro Peta's chance of making this team down the line is a little bit lower because of that depth. Now, I'd love to see him on there. I'd love to see him kind of come on and cling on to the practice squad, but I'm not sure. Same with Brett Toth. I think Brett's probably the most likely player to come on and make the practice squad just because of what we've seen out of him. The fact that he gave up that military career, was given an exception to come over and make a shot of his NFL dream. So that would be what I'm looking at. I think I would love to see more than anything Brett Toth to make this practice squad. I know a lot of people are high on Mailata, so I'll ask one question for you. If between now and week 1 you want to see a Jordan Mailata film room taking every preseason game from week 1 to week 4 and comparing to the film rooms that I put out last year. So those film rooms last year were pretty much the videos that shot this channel into relevance, really. Without those 2 film room videos, it'd probably be a lot smaller. So if you want to see an in-depth Jordan Mailata filming that takes week 1 to week 4 2018, week 1 to week 4 2019, side by side, let's look at this development, let's get down, let's get gritty with it, and let's just give you guys the most in-depth breakdown we possibly can. If you want to see it, just blow that chat up and I'll make it happen between now and next Sunday. There's a lot coming on this channel between now and next Sunday. One of the main things we'd love to bring to you guys, obviously we've got podcasts and stuff anyway, but we're going to bring out a special live stream. We don't know what day it's going to come out yet. We'll keep you updated. So make sure you're following me on Twitter, which is at Liam Jenkins PSN, or Philly Sports Network, which is at Philadelphia SN. Either of those, we're essentially going to work on a live stream preview before week 1, where we have myself, Brian, Chris, Eric, Thomas, so as many Philly Sports Network writers as we can that are going to break down the opponent, break down the Redskins, break down the Eagles, give predictions, give betting tips, give everything we can to give you guys a pre-game preview show, and that should be on the Friday or the Saturday. And if you want to see that, again, just let us know in the chat. I love seeing the reaction, the reaction, is that even a word? The reaction, to the Jordan Mailata one. Can I do a film on Greg Ward? I think I did one before, but I mean, I'm happy to kind of go back and look over it. Maybe players, like 5 players that should have made the Eagles roster. I think that'd be a nice video to do. I think I've probably spoiled it if you've been on this video since the minute we went live, because you already know that straight away it's going to be Alex Singleton, it's going to be Mark and Michelle, it's going to be Greg Ward. I mean, there's one guy I'm really intrigued to see if the Eagles bring back is Anthony Rush. Huge defensive tackle, out of UAB, undrafted free agent, built like a monster, okay? And he blew up for the Raiders this preseason. He got cut by the Eagles, went to Oakland, and had a monster preseason. So he's been cut. If he gets back, I'm just saying, I think the Eagles would take him back. Maybe even be their DT5. I would love that. But that's just a personal hunch from my side of it. Fayren says, how did I become an Eagles fan? It is weird. So I always have to say this story, and it's so bizarre to me because I always forget there's new people discovering. Like it feels like I'm honestly living like in a dream right now, because the fact it is my full-time job, and it's like there's always new people growing and coming along. So it's amazing. Essentially I played Madden. I think it was Madden 09. Like I got an Xbox when I was 14. Only game it came with was Madden. I wanted Modern Warfare. Didn't get that. I went to the game shop, and the only game that was like cheap enough I could afford on my birthday was the Madden that year. So I took Madden out. Kind of pissed around with it. I didn't really know I was too busy, obsessed with Charlton Athletic. Didn't really know what American football was. Eventually fell in love. I was like, oh my god, this is really fun. I like it. Really I just selected a random team like the Eagles, did a franchise, learned all the players, and then I was that lonely kid at school that didn't really have many friends. So I'd spend all my time literally in the library watching NFL.com videos, right? So like top 10 highlights and like Deshaun Jackson this and that sort of thing. And over time that then transposed into a real love for the game. And I started watching it closely and getting NFL Game Pass. And I was in a separate career path. Like I got out of school, doing to college, and I was in TV broadcasting. If you just search Liam Jenkins commentary, please don't. It's just video from me doing televised like motorsport and stuff. My voice is somehow higher than it is now, right? And I didn't like the industry. I didn't like the idea of having to kiss up to a producer and do this and that and pretend you're someone you're not just to get on TV. Like I hated it. So my other passion was the Eagles at this point. I was like obsessed, and I was like, I've done journalism, I've got my degree. My grandfather was an editor for the News of the World paper in England, which is like one of the biggest like ones at the time. So I was like, do you know what? I'm going to make my own blog. And worst case scenario, everyone hates it, which is my life anyway, and I have fun doing it, and it's a hobby. Best case scenario, it's a career. And over the course of 5 years, we've ended up here. I was 19 when I made the website. We're now here where we've got full-time credentials with the Flyers, with the Phantoms. We've got a relationship with the Sixers, with the Phillies, obviously like with the Eagles. The Eagles wrote like an article on me like before the London game, which was crazy. So yeah, man, I think my story's almost like a little bit unique. I never like really saying it a lot because I feel it's I feel boring when I talk about myself. Like I'm really awkward and shy about it. So it's the one thing I try not to harp on about, because I don't ever want to seem arrogant or condescending. I just kind of like get my head down and let my work sort of talk for itself. How would somebody get in contact about working with you? If you go to phillysportsnetwork.com, there is an area on there that says write for us, and that can give you essentially everything you need to know. So any roles we've got open, that sort of thing, contact details. I think as of right now, we're stacked on Eagle stuff. Like we've kind of built like a little Eagle super team for the year, but that's not to say that we won't keep stuff on record and consider it. So yeah, man, it's really cool. So Chi says, I can relate to you on this. Lots of Madden and film analysis, but truly, yeah, like for me, I mean, I picked a great time. I mean, 2011 for me, you had the Dream Team, and then Charlton Athletic were in the midst of absolute turmoil. So it was sporting brilliance on my end there for sure. But yeah, so now we're here, and it's my first full season on. I won't say the Eagles beat because I'm not in Philadelphia, but I don't want to say putting out more work, but I'm doing as much work as I physically can, and that's it. So does PSN need a lawyer? I hope not yet, but I've got a lawyer friend that I can call on if needed. I suppose I can't tell if that was like an insult or not. Dude, I wish the ladies did, Roland. Unfortunately, I don't have that kind of power yet. You know, this happens when you're still hung up on someone for over a year. It's one of those things, right? Can you do a film room on every person on the... Oh my god, that's a task. Do you know what? I wanted to do a film room every week. The problem with film rooms is that they take so long, depending on the player, because I want to at least watch 3 games per player. So it was like really, really tough. Like if you take Fletcher Cox, for instance, right? You go 3 games, get all the plays, edit them, narrate them, voiceover, get it up. Like, it takes a lot of time. And especially like when you do a new position, like for cornerbacks, like for me is the most fun, or receiver, but something like, especially in the trenches where it's sort of hand technique and moves and understanding the responsibilities and trying to learn on the back of that, I guess, defensive schemes and play calling, you have to put a lot in, because I don't want to sound like I don't know what I'm on about. So it is like a massive learning process. Like, I get stuff wrong in film rooms, you guys pull me up on it, and that's why I love it so much, because there is that back and forth, and you hold me accountable, and I learn through it as much as you guys do. But you know, like trying to understand the difference. Let's go back a couple of years where I didn't know 3-tech and a 5-tech, and that was something I had to learn as like age 21, 22, trying to figure out all this different stuff. So with every position you do, you want to understand why they're so good at it. In front to do that, you've then got to understand the back end of the position. So you've got to then start buying books and that sort of thing. And yeah, and so it take a little bit of time, but there'll be film rooms every single week between now and the end of the regular season. So Chris, I'm really sorry you went through that, man. I'm glad that you're doing okay now and you're in this stream. It's really cool that you're here, and hopefully that all is a little bit better for you. When's your next live stream and what time? I don't honestly know. Your best chance would be to follow me on Twitter at Liam Jenkins PSN, or just subscribe. I didn't realise if you hit subscribe, there should be like a little bell icon. If you tap that, that will turn notifications on. So whenever we go live or we put up a video, then you'll be the first to hear about it. So that's probably the best way to do it. But yeah, guys, I know you've gone like massively off topic here, but is there anything else you wanted me to discuss, or go back over the roster again, just get one look at how stuff's laid out? I'm more than happy to, if that's bit of interest. Obviously, we've got all the little cards here, including the gorgeous linebacker card, where Zach Brown is definitely part of the team. Yeah, we can always do that. So, but yeah, if there's a certain position or a question that you've got that you want me to answer, I'm more than happy to sit here for a little while and talk shop as well. I purchased the white hoodie. Oh, dude, Ace, that's amazing to hear, man. The white hoodie is the favourite thing I've ever done. Let me see if I can get an image of it up. I don't know if I can. Give me 2 seconds. But the white hoodie, for me, I loved it because I tried to make it so subtle with the design. And yeah, like I bought one like as soon as I could afford it, because I was, had a second job and stuff. But yeah, like the actual design of it, and knowing that every little piece of that flight tag is a different date that corresponds somewhere else. So if I go, let me find it here. You can say I wasn't prepared for that. I don't like trying to sell things. Can I go window capture? Right, I'm gonna try this. It might work, it might not. Please bear with. Do you know what? I won't bother. I'll just put a link in the description. It'll be easier, won't it? If anyone wants to watch it, then they can. Alright, so if I do that one. Alright, so that's the hoodie that we're talking about. So that hoodie there, essentially, if you look on the actual flight tag label, the idea is it's like you've put it through postage or customs and they stick the sticker on. Every little box on that flight tag hoodie has got a different reference. So, for instance, it says obviously PSN season, but under it's like an abbreviation for process or flyers. And the actual date on it, there's a date on, I think this is an item number. It's like SB52 2433. So it literally gives you a code, but obviously it's then a subtle hint to the Eagles won the Super Bowl 52, score. So I know I'll probably run that one backwards, so it's a bit hard to zoom in here. 4133. So yeah, it's a nice little item. I think it looks really cool. It's very streetweary. Mylata can sing. Do you know what I do miss? The offensive lineman that did the Halo song. What a guy he was. What a guy. I know someone, I think it was for my birthday, someone actually got him to record a message to me, and that was pretty cool. True Prodigy says tight end depth is questionable, and I totally agree. So, for one last rodeo today, let's go through the roster one more time. So, if you're just joining us, don't worry. Here we go. So, who's in, who's out, quarterback. I think this one's kind of obvious. We know we've got Carson Wentz. We know we've got McCown. We know we've got Lord Sudfeld. Clayton Dawson has been waived. That was expected. But there is a chance if Nate Sudfeld is placed on IR, they bring back either Kessler or they promote Thorson. That would be the way of doing it. Erica, happy birthday for tomorrow. I hope you have a fantastic day. And thank you for tuning into his live stream. On to the running backs. There's one last little run through. This one obviously caused a little bit of discussion. On a scale of 1 to Alex Singleton, it was about a 3. It wasn't quite up there. Obviously, Boston Scott was the man that missed out mainly. Josh Adams and Wendell Smallwood, 2 backs who have led the team in rushing in 2017 and 2018. None of them are on the team anymore, and that is a little bit hard to swallow. They're not on the team. They're currently without an NFL team. So I think there's a stat where it's every back who's led the Eagles in rushing. So it was 2018 for Adams, 2017 was Blunt, 2016 was Smallwood. and 2015 with Marco Murray. None of those guys are on teams, which is crazy. So, yeah, absolutely wild there for a statistic. But that's your running back at the moment. I mean, obviously there's now a discussion over would LeSean McCoy fit? Where would he fit? Who's he taking snaps away from if the price is right? Can I sing the Halo song Faith? The answer is no. Maybe not. Maybe in tomorrow's This Week in Philadelphia Sports. Also, just to show in the chat, because I'm sure we've got some new people here as well. Does anyone who's on this channel watch This Week in Philadelphia Sports? Because if not, I'm going to strongly urge you to and start stamping my feet, because it's my favourite thing I do. And if you enjoy these streams, you will love that as well. On to offensive line. This has caused probably, I think, the most discussion of the evening so far, just because of how deep this offensive line depth chart really is. Like, if you take a look at it, it's crazy, right? So beneath Andre Dillard, beneath those top 5, I mean, the fact that Nate Herbig has got onto this roster is brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Again, like, massive congratulations to him. The main shock here is that Stefan Wisniewski is out of the roster, out of the running, unless you've been around PSN for a little while, because that's been the one angle that I've been focusing on. So Antoine, I've not skipped wide receiver. I go from the ball outwards. I know some people go skill positions first. It just makes chronological sense for me to go ball outwards. So Brett Toth could be a practice squad candidate. I think that's more than likely going to happen there, given the fact that he's already, like we said, come away from the army to pursue this dream. Suro Peta could be another candidate for that. Anthony Fabiano maybe. Ryan Mayfield I don't think we'll see again. He was most recently with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. On to tight end. This is the one position again that I think we do have to have a conversation about, because the depth is about as barren as you can get. There is less depth there than I've got hair on the side of my head right now, and it pains me to say that. I wish it wasn't the case either, in fact. But for me, I think Joshua Perkins may come back. Alex Ellis may come back. Will Tye is guaranteed money. He could be the third tight end, but I don't know. The Eagles need to get someone in. It has to be fixed through the waiver wire. This could be the position that was sacrificed so they could keep Rudy Ford. There had to be a giveth and taketh somewhere. That may have been that corresponding transaction, but for me, I don't know. That's interesting. So Cameo, this is an interesting word. That Mailata as a blocking tight end sounds scary. I agree with it. I can see it certainly working. Chris says you're more positive than the talk radio around here. I don't know about. I just try and be honest, man. I think that from my background in commentary and doing broadcasting, I kind of just have that hunch of toning a voice and trying to get as much energy as I can. Like, I love what I do and I want it to be passionate and energetic and fun. And the thing with sports radio is when you're on 24 hours a day, at some point it's going to get sour and you've got to do something to keep people listening. And so it's a grind and a half doing sports radio. So like, it's kind of why they get a bit soury, I guess. But, you know, if we can provide an alternative for that and we're a little bit more fun and we can do these live streams and podcasts and stuff as we do, then that's all the better. We'll move on to wide receiver. And this is obviously a position where we, on a scale of, again, 1 to Alex Singleton, discussions ramped up to about a 7, I would say here. The fact that both Mark and Michelle and Greg Ward Jr. miss out on this position and Matt Collins stays around. And every time we bring this up, the chat explodes. Half of it with, you need to look at Matt Collins and say he's great. Other people say, why is he on the roster? I'm torn down the middle. I can see both sides of the argument. I think Howie Roseman's probably done the best thing he could. The talent evaluation team have done the best thing they could. And again, this does go back to, I think, just trying to cash in on their investment. They don't want to be in a position where they're cutting guys too early and doing a tease Tabor. It's really, really hard. Just for example, like we go back to offensive line just so quickly here. Matt Pryor, awful preseason. Absolutely awful. 5th round pick. He's going to be there. Matt Collins, 5th round pick, hasn't looked great. Undrafted free agents have done better. He's gonna be there. It's one of those things. Running back, just on that same note, Donnell Pumphrey, Wendell Smallwood, both of them, I think their experiments have been over long ago. They still took until now to get rid of them. The Eagles don't like giving up on players early, and I feel like that's why they're both still around. Marcus, it's great to see you in the chat, my man. Also, just a big shout out to Kevin, who I haven't seen a message from him. Antoine annoyed about Greg Ward as well. ML Striker, I know, is one of our regulars here. And, of course, Takeem, who's still restraining from the trade rumours. I thought he'd be all over the LeSean McCoy hype, but not today. He's on best behaviour. Maybe not enough coffee today. Really quickly then, so we've got a question on Matt Collins. So from Faith, have we forgotten 2017? Hollins has big play potential. Do you know what? I completely agree. And in 2017, he was great. He had, I think it was 227 yards and a touchdown. exploded out of the slot. He was perennially used in the slot. I put an article out earlier this offseason, in fact, saying that the Eagles already have their next big slot receiver in Mac Hollins. Like, they don't need to go out and get a Jalen Hurd or one of the bigger guys they were working out if Hollins can get healthy. And I feel as though that with JJ Arcega-Whiteside naturally going to be the heir to the throne to Alshon Jeffrey, that why not? Why can't Mac Hollins come in and be this starting slot guy that's 6'4", is a bigger built guy, and replace Nelson Aguilar, who is more of a crisp route runner. I feel like size is the name of the game, especially down in the red zone. It wouldn't surprise me if Hollins, who scored his lone touchdown out of the slot, I think 30% of his snaps came out of the slot, if I'm not mistaken. Someone may have to pull me up on that to make sure, but I'll just kick something. I think that may be roughly the number. If we go to defensive tackle, there was a little bit of, I suppose, worry here in a way, because Fletcher Cox is on his own. There's not really a lot of depth behind him, and Trayvon Hester misses out on the run. That's the big one. Trayvon Hester, he was excellent last year in doses, was brilliant on special teams. Currently with that huge block field goal, isn't on this team. I'm really excited to see what Timmy Jernigan can do. Like, I've never seen anyone so angry before. So Jernigan's fuming. He's going to come in all guns blazing. Malik Jackson's been a bit quieter. He's got that versatility. I think that we could see a lot from Timmy Jernigan this year, but don't write off the fact that Hassan Ridgeway is there. They may decide to bring back Aziz Shittu, who was signed on a regular deal. They could bring him back without much in the way of a penalty. But who knows? I think Trayvon Hester is going to be the guy that most people want to see in this position. Over to defensive end. No real shocks here. It's nice to see, obviously, Deshaun Hall make the roster as a fourth defensive end. That was brilliant on his part. Josh Sweat and Sharif Miller, though, I don't think they've done too much at all. And for me, this is the big one. It's Deshaun Hall is your DE4 now, behind Barnett and Curry. And he's earned it, absolutely earned it. He deserves that roster spot. But Sweat's got to prove something. Like, this year he has to. If he is still going to be your DE5, again, I don't want to raise the same point, but bearing in mind that I think it was 48 snaps he took against the Saints. Most of his snaps came against the Saints in a blowout loss. He's not done much at the NFL level. Preseason was a little bit more encouraging against Taylor Lewan, but other than that, it was silent, and Sharif Miller remains one-dimensional. So no real shocks in terms of who's out of the roster, but maybe a lack of star power on who's in it, or a lack of development. Erica says, my husband and my son and I are going to the first game against the Redskins. That's amazing. I hope you have a fantastic time there. Let's get on to linebacker then. So with my tremendous editing, because I definitely did not forget Zach Brown, this one is where most of our discussion has been centralised around tonight, and it will be in this video tomorrow. So guys, if you watch this video tomorrow, you've probably heard all of these points 7 or 8 times now, so please, don't feel bad. Like, there's more content on the way, and especially with This Week in Philadelphia Sports as well. Nigel Bradham is going to be a starter alongside Zach Brown, who, just for the sake of this, will put... Oh, no, I've moved the wrong one. Oh, that didn't go well. There he is. There he is. Okay. So Brown and Bradham will be your starters, and then Camu Grugier-Hill is probably going to be on IR, and then we're going to see Nate Jerry over the middle behind Brown, LJ Fort outside, and TJ Edwards as well. Those are probably going to be the way this linebacker court shapes out. That would be at least how I expect it initially. Alex Singleton not making the team has probably been a topic of conversation alongside TJ Edwards. Singleton does have a massive market in Canada. Calgary are all over him. It's just down to him whether he wants to be on an NFL practice squad or go and play in Canada for a bit. I think the weather might be a bit warmer in America, but he'll get more exposure in America or Canada, whichever one. Who knows? You know what I'm trying to say. We'll also go to cornerbacks really quickly as we fly through. Probably the most complete position on the team, or safety. Guys, please stop shouting at each other. I love you all. There's no need here. Come on, let's all be friends. So Ronald Darby, Rasul Douglas, Sidney Jones, Avonte Maddox, LeBlanc will go on IR. Mills is on PUP. Orlando Scandrick will probably get brought back, so don't be surprised to see Scandrick. Again, had 13 passes defensed in 2018. So his best career yet in terms of passes defensed. And then if we go to safety, I think that's the most complete position on the team, and the one person that I said would make this roster that everyone else overlooked, Rudy Ford at the bottom. That's my claim to fame for this offseason. Trey Sullivan and DeAndre Hall both waived, both special teams absolute aces. Again, combined for 13 tackles, over 60% of snaps. They needed to get someone in. I think Rudy Ford is going to be the guy that does that job. And now, one last little slide. If you haven't yet purchased it, guys, in England at least, it's officially Sunday, which means you've got 24 hours to buy this t-shirt if you want it. So we've given away, I think, about 9 now over the last few days. But this is a limited edition shirt. It will be up on sale for today only. Just to commemorate the fact that if you've been around our preseason live streams, then congratulations, and you can then wear this with a badge of pride. It may even give you a little eye test as well, or give some of the elderly something to read before they get number plates, because I know in America you'd have to retake your driving test. Maybe it will count for that as well, who knows. But yeah, it's a cool little design. I've copped myself a nice hoodie with it on, so we can all live in our little merch windows together, working out, oh my god, we were on the same thing, you were in Endzone Live, and imagine, okay, you're single, you're walking around, and you see someone else catches your eye wearing that shirt, and you'll know exactly where they've been, and the humour they have, and their love for the Philadelphia. What more could you possibly want out of a shirt? And on that note, before we get into hypotheticals surrounding nights out and Tinder, we're back here. Any last questions, guys? Because I know I don't want to keep you too late. I know there's plenty of college football on you're probably going to watch. And it's Labor Day weekend as well, which I still don't fully understand the meaning of. But I wish you a happy Labor Day weekend regardless, because I think that's a nice thing to do. So let's just see what you guys are saying in the chat, because obviously we're getting towards the end of the stream. My voice is going very, very slowly. I know there's been a little bit of qualms there. So I don't know about Freddie Mitchell. I think Freddie Mitchell is Freddie Mitchell's own biggest fan, which is fine. But when your biggest fan is an obsessed super fan, it's not fine. I don't like the lifestyle he tries to lead and post all over Instagram and make everyone like licking for one play he made and then was about, it's one of them. But I'd rather not talk about Freddie Mitchell, to be honest with you. It's nothing holiday. Oh, I thought it was Labor Day. Is it not Labor Day weekend? Oh, I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. If it's 4th and 26, not Freddie Mitchell, because he made the catch once and couldn't even catch a 1st and 10 2 plays later, so does it really matter? That was a joke, by the way. I'm only messing with you. Look, question I'd ask is, if we can win with the 53 we have now, or will it take the 53 you or we want instead? Oh, that's a good question. We can certainly, the team can certainly win with this. There is no debate in that. It's a very complete roster. You'll struggle to go through every position, and the only position I can think, honestly, where they need depth right now is either tight end, defensive tackle, or defensive end. Outside of that, it's set. It says a lot when your team's built through the trenches, but outside of that, it's sound. Very dangerous receiving core, very dangerous secondary, extremely depth linebacker core now. Quarterback's obviously set. Running back's brilliant. I don't know, man. I think obviously it's a great position to be in where you're pining after undrafted free agents to make the roster. Purely because, Rene, I'm really sorry we're coming towards the end of it now. I'm sorry. The stream replay will be up soon. I think it takes like a couple hours, and the stream whole replay gets up for you to watch again anyway. But if not, if you're just getting here, don't panic. There will be a very condensed version of this, probably like a 10-minute video put up tomorrow that breaks down every position with all of the same flashy cards, all of the same takeaways, but with some stats and a voice where I'm not trying to be overly quiet because my parents are sleeping. But outside of that, yeah, it's I think this team's very complete and should be able to compete. This is a Super Bowl winning team. Like, this team can go all the way. The question is now, can they? What stands in their way? What obstacles will they face? I think the schedule itself is pretty interesting. I just won 4 Madden matches during this stream. This has to be good luck. If you're playing Weekend League as well, I have to stay stream for another 2 hours. I didn't even qualify for Weekend League. I didn't have time to qualify for Weekend League. I've been that busy churning out content for you guys. I didn't even qualify for Weekend League. I'm fuming. I thought we had a top 10 easy schedule. Yeah, the schedule's, in comparison to last year, absolutely. Mark and Michelle DeAndre Tommy into the roster. I don't think Matt Collins is going to go to IR. Like, he should be fine, to be honest with you. Like, if they were going to put him to IR, I don't know. I know, because the only person you can certainly bring back is a veteran, and there aren't really any veterans there. So they're all subject to waivers, and I don't think you could keep him on that week 1 roster alignment with the idea that, we might get Greg Ward, we might get Mark and Michelle, because they could get poached from elsewhere. So I don't think they're going to go through that way. For a minute, I thought Josh Adams was the next guy. I think Josh Adams had potential to be an RB2 or 3. Like, he was never going to be RB1 worthy. I don't know. It's intriguing. I think he'll catch on somewhere. Again, somewhere maybe like the Jets, maybe maybe even Detroit and pick up where their recent running back left off, who's just been waived. So who knows? Who knows? There's a lot of questions right now. But I'm going to leave it there, guys, because we've been streaming for just over about an hour now. So I can't believe we've had close to like 200 of you in the stream like throughout. It's been absolutely nuts. Again, if you're not subscribed to this channel, if you could, that would be brilliant. We'd love to build a community that thrives and have as many subscribers and like community and streams and videos and podcasts as possible. There will be daily content on this channel. And of course, if you've not been to our website just yet, let me plug that now, because that's sort of, without phillysportsnetwork.com, there's no Philly Sports Network YouTube channel. This is where you can find me 90% of the time, and the other 10%, which is still most of my day, I'll end up being here. So that's our website for anyone that hasn't yet visited it. We cover all 5 Philadelphia sports teams, where, you know, as I said, we're credentialed with the Flyers and the Phantoms. We've got a relationship with the Sixers and the Eagles, blah blah blah. We're doing it for 5 years. We've got about 30 writers. We want as many of those guys as possible to come in here and just communicate with you guys. We want this to be such a unique thing where instead of having, I'm not going to reference any other blogs, but blogs put out content, cut, black line, that's it. Like, I'd much rather have something where you feel part of it and you can shape our content, and we have this very unique thing where we watch games together and we can chat together about big events. So that'd be cool. But if not, if you want to follow me on Twitter at Liam Jenkins PSN, tomorrow there will be a cut down version of this video. So if, like Renee, you're a little bit late to the show, sorry we can do a bit later, Renee. There will be a video tomorrow that goes over every position in a lot more depth, with some statistical analysis and stuff as well, and projections. Probably once all the practice squad gets sorted out. And of course, my favourite part of the week, This Week in Philadelphia Sports. That's going to drop tomorrow afternoon and bring a bit more of a comical take to everything we do. So guys, thank you so much to everyone that's tuned in. I love the fact that we've literally had 3 streams in 3 days now. It's been such a blast, and thank you for making all that possible. I'm going to go head off and finish this very warm can of Coca-Cola. Enjoy Labor Day weekend, which I think is a good thing. And just know that next time, it's pre-game stuff. From now until next Sunday, we're hyping up the regular season. Eagles football is back, and your best place to experience all of it, except the game itself, which is obviously at the link, is here. So I've just probably ruined the joke from tomorrow there. But honestly, guys, it's been amazing doing this stream with you. You guys are the best fans possible. I'm very, very lucky to call this fan base, you know, the one that is really a home for everyone. And yeah, I'll see you very soon. This Week in Philadelphia Sports tomorrow, and a recap very much so of this video. Liam Jenkins PSN on Twitter, phillysportsnetwork.com. I'll see you soon.